Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unit 3, Day 4. Today, we're going to be talking about the Declaration of Independence and the beginning of the Revolutionary War. Now, I do want to start with an important distinction here. I know when I was younger and when I was a student, even in high school going through U.S. history, that I did not realize, we tend to assume the Declaration of Independence happened and then, boom, Revolutionary War happens after that. A lot of people don't realize that the war had actually started in April of 1775 with the Battle of Lexington and Concord. And you'll see sometimes people do draw a distinction of the War for Independence and then the Revolutionary War when we finally declare that independence and say, hey, we want to be our own country there. It is important to understand that distinction, though, between that, because Lexington and Concord is going to be the first time that you're going to have soldiers from the colonial militia and then the British infantry fighting against each other in battle and blood actually being drawn between the two sides like it would be there. So you're going to see that for the very first time. But despite that happening, you're going to see the colonists and the Second Continental Congress still try to work out the issues that they are having. You're going to see a lot of people in the colonies, we'll talk about this more tomorrow, but a lot of people in the colonies didn't want to go to war. They weren't necessarily pro-British in their policy, and they weren't necessarily like pro-patriot. A lot of people just didn't want to go to war during this time. So you're going to see the colonists really do push hard with the Second Continental Congress to try to fix things and to try to make things better between them and the British. Now, I think after Lexington and Concord, they had kind of reached the point of no return. I mean, you're having militia fight against the government. At that point, I don't know if you can go back and fix the issues that you had between each other. Despite that, you will see the colonists, again, try to work this out. The most famous attempt would be the Olive Branch Petition that they send to the king, basically where they reaffirm their allegiance to the king and say, hey, we want to make this right. We want to fix this and fix our relationship with the British. How does the king respond to that? Well, at that point, he was done hearing from the colonies. He refused to even read the Olive Branch Petition, and he would respond with his own proclamation for suppressing the rebellion that was happening in the colonies. So we reached the point of no return where the British aren't willing to back down. And it's interesting because the same time period the colonies are working out the Olive Branch Petition, they're also kind of hedging their bets and starting to work on the Declaration of Independence and other documents during this time. In fact, Jefferson writes the Declaration of Independence at the urging of John Adams, because John Adams says, hey, nobody likes me, because John Adams was known to be kind of a difficult person. And he also said, Jefferson, you're a very good writer. I'd like you to write it. John Adams and Ben Franklin both helped Jefferson edit the Declaration of Independence. He would then present that in July 1776. And based on everything that would happen, you would see that the vote would still be pretty controversial, and you would have a lot of colonies, most notably South Carolina, that was very resistant to sign on with the Declaration of Independence, partly because of wealth issues. They wanted to still make money off trade with Great Britain, and they were worried about that happening. Now, with the Declaration itself, I did mention the editing that happened with that. And most of us know, the beginning part of the Declaration of Independence, which says that all men are created equal. Now, just that statement right there from Thomas Jefferson is going to have shockwaves throughout the rest of U.S. history. Because everybody looks at this and says, well, how can Jefferson write that all men are created equal while at the same time owning slaves? And that is going to be the later question that a lot of people, you're going to have African Americans and women and others say, hey, the Declaration says all men are created equal, so let's make sure that all men are created equal. So it really is going to have shockwaves for the future United States. And if you do look at the original Declaration of Independence before it was edited, it did have quite the harsh rebuttal of slavery in that. But Ben Franklin encouraged Jefferson to remove that because there was concerns that the southern states, most notably South Carolina, would not sign on with the Declaration of Independence due to their reliance on slavery. Today, part of your assignment is reading the Declaration of Independence, and I encourage you to read the whole thing. we tend to just look at the beginning of it and that's really it. But you're going to see that throughout it, the things that we have been talking about these past couple of days, that Jefferson will really mention each of those and his grievances that he writes against the king. He will mention all of those things and talk about, hey, we've petitioned over and over again and nothing is happening that we are satisfied with. And I know for me, I love the Declaration and I love reading it because the language that Jefferson uses in it, very, very striking language. I'm going to read you really quick my favorite part of the Declaration of Independence. And just to show you what's in it, really for me, I really like the last paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. And in it, he says, let me find the right page here. He says, in every stage of these oppressions, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. A prince whose character is thus marked by every act which may define a tyrant is unfit to be the ruler of a free people. Wow. The fact that Jefferson uses that, he is directly striking at the king when he basically says, you're a tyrant and not fit to be the ruler of a free people. Now, we will see during the American Revolution, the British would actually march on Monticello. And if it were not for a slave rushing back to Monticello and warning Jefferson, Jefferson would have been captured. And you can only imagine what the British would have, how elated they would have been to be able to capture the man who wrote the Declaration of Independence. Also, another key part of this, which you're going to watch a scene of the passing of the Declaration of Independence when they actually vote on it. And this is something that I want you to keep in mind during this. This is the last line of the Declaration of Independence. It says, and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. I put an explanation in the slides of what exactly treason looked like in the British Empire and what the punishment for treason was. It meant pretty much certainly that you were going to die, but it's going to go through the process on there of what the actual punishment was. A pretty horrific death that you would go through, but also the punishment of your family. When it says in there, we pledge our fortunes, they really were pledging their fortunes. And if the American Revolution had gone a different way, I don't know if the British would have executed all the, continental leaders and that kind of things, but things for those men would have not worked out very well. So let's remember that the sacrifices that they made and the risks that they were able to make, it's pretty incredible that they were able to do that because they believed in a cause and they believed in that cause so strongly. So enjoy reading the Declaration of Independence today. I know you're probably thinking, yeah, you're a history teacher. You love reading it anyway. But really, enjoy it and try to put yourself in the mindset of these people who are about to declare independence. And just think about what would be going through your mind and how scary that could be. So have a great day. And again, let me know if you have any questions.